Disclaimer. I doesn't claim any of the arts. All the pictures shown belongs to the respective artist and company. If you are original owner and want me to remove the video, I will do it immediately. Just send me an email to inform me. And if you like my content, please subscribe to my channel. Chapter begins, and we see that the sky was big and wide as Umbra and Theo flew over the pretty lands of Dragon's Nest. When they got close to a big waterfall, Umbra turned his wings and went down. There was a big hole hidden behind the falling water, a cave covered by the rushing water. Theo got off his back, and his boots made sounds as he walked around. He was surprised by what he saw. I thought I knew all of the Winter Mountains because of my time with the black snow, but I didn't know there was a crystal cave here, Theo said quietly, amazed. The cave sparkled with light from the many crystals in the walls. He looked at Umbra and smiled. You really like shiny things. Then Theo noticed some strange plants in the shadows. He was interested, so he walked over and looked at the unusual flowers with his hands. His voice became serious. I understand now. This is how you changed into the shadow dragon. You've been eating these, haven't you? He spoke firmly, staring at Umbra. He picked up one of the ghost spirit flowers. His face became hard to read, and his voice was quiet but sharp. Who would have thought there were so many of these flowers here? At that moment, a message popped up in front of him. Ghost spirit flower, a good thing for evil creatures. Theo breathed out slowly, holding the flower tightly. He spoke in a low, serious voice that broke the silence of the cave. Dragons and evil creatures are not the same. How did you use this kind of power? He paused for a moment, then his lightning power flashed to life. The flower in his hand turned into flames and disappeared. This is too risky. I'll burn all of these later. As soon as he said that, Umbra became stiff. He seemed unhappy. Theo didn't care and raised an eyebrow, chuckling. Relax, I'm not going to touch the crystals. Just as he turned to leave, he saw something at the end of the cave that scared him. A lot of chains hanging on the wall like a web. His heart beat fast as he looked closer. Not just chains. There was something or someone trapped in them. Theo walked forward, trying to be brave. Hanging in the chains was a dead body. The skin was gone and only bones were left, covered in old, torn clothes. A person, Theo whispered. Then he realized, no, a dead body, and it's been here for at least 10 years. He crouched down, thinking hard as he looked at the body. Even though it was old, it didn't look as decayed as it should. He thought, the cold probably kept it safe. But this isn't normal. This person must have been a very strong fighter to not decay this much. He felt suspicious. He knew this wasn't just a normal death. A strong warrior dying here, tied up like this. Something was wrong. I need to come back and look into this later, he said, standing up quickly. First, I need to take care of the ghost spirit flowers. Then a red light flashed from the empty eye holes of the dead body's skull. Theo barely had time to react, screaming in a horrible voice, Kyle! Theo's eyes opened wide. Did it just say a name? It was too late. Umbra roared loudly. The dragon hit the body with his claw, pinning it down before it could reach Theo. Theo stepped back, confused. Umbra was protecting him. The body was angry and gritted its teeth. Then it screamed Kyle's name again and tried to bite Umbra's leg. Theo's heart almost stopped. No! He jumped forward, blocking the attack with his hand. Pain shot through his arm as the body bit him. The body growled in an angry, decaying voice that scared Theo. Kyle, Robert, I will never forgive either of you. Theo was shocked. He couldn't believe it. His father's name and the black dragon's name. This thing knew them both. Who could this be? Before he could fight back, a wind blew through the cave, and he heard a sword cutting through the air. A person in white armor appeared, moving like a skilled fighter. Theo saw Evelyn charge forward, ready to attack. White armored dragon cavalry blade, barrage. The body's bones broke under the attack. Evelyn twisted her sword and stabbed it through the body's head. Theo's body gave out. He fell to the floor, breathing hard and shaking. He heard Evelyn's voice as she ran to him. Young Master Theo, say something. Are you okay? Theo smiled weakly. Evelyn, sorry I messed up. Then the pain started. A strong pain shot through his body worse than before. His nerves burned, and he felt weak. The pain, I can't take this. This isn't just poison, it's evil poison, and I'll be dead soon if I don't get help. Evelyn knew what to do. She put her arm around him and tried to lift him. We don't have time. I'm taking you to HQ now, she said firmly. Hold on a little longer. Before she could move him, Umbra growled deeply, and Evelyn looked at Umbra. The dragon stepped forward, Evelyn ignored him and tried to save Theo. But the dragon growled again and pushed her with his head, almost knocking her over. She became angry. "What the hell, Umbra? I'm trying to save him," she yelled. But Umbra pushed her again harder. "Stop it, Umbra. I don't care if you're Theo's partner," a weak voice interrupted her. "Evelyn, wait!" Theo, pale and sweaty, opened his eyes to look at Umbra. He smiled faintly. "Umbra, you have a way to help, right?" The dragon rumbled and nodded. Theo chuckled weakly. "Okay then, I trust you with my life partner." Evelyn was shocked and frustrated. "Young Master Theo, you'll die if we don't go back now. You've been poisoned," Theo breathed slowly. "Even with help, the chance of living is low. That's why I trust Umbra." His voice faded and he closed his eyes. Evelyn panicked. "Theo, stay with me," she shouted, shaking him. "Don't close your eyes. Stay awake." As she tried to keep him awake, Umbra moved quickly. He bit off some ghost spirit flowers and crushed some shiny crystals, preparing the cure. He put everything together for Evelyn to use. The air in the cave was tense as Evelyn looked at Umbra. She tried to speak calmly. "You want me to mix this and give it to him?" Umbra nodded firmly. He was sure about what to do. But she looked at Theo and saw that he was getting worse. Evelyn clenched her teeth. Theo had made his choice. He trusted Umbra, so she would do what he wanted. She grabbed the things and mixed them quickly, ready to do what was needed. "Fine, I'll do it." She used her power to create a controlled flame. The crystals melted and mixed with the flowers. Evelyn carefully poured the cure into his mouth, her hands shaking. She watched as it went down his throat, waiting. That nothing. Theo didn't move, his face pale. He didn't react. Evelyn's heart beat loudly. Umbra stood still, watching Theo. Seconds passed slowly. Theo's heartbeat echoed through the cave, so loud that Evelyn and Umbra could hear it. Evelyn stepped back, surprised. "This is impossible. I can't believe this," she whispered. Umbra knew what was happening. His eyes lit up. He knew the cure was working. Theo's body started to glow with blue energy. The energy moved across his skin like a river. Evelyn could barely understand it. He's getting better. But then the energy changed. The blue light flickered and darkened. Evelyn was scared. "Wait, no. His magic, it's turning black." She stepped back. "I've never seen this before." Theo's body arched off the ground and his limbs twitched. Evelyn panicked. "What's going on? Young Master, can you hear me?" she yelled. A message flashed. "Commencing body cleansing. Purification." As the words came out, Theo's face twisted in pain. His skin turned pale, with cracks appearing on his face like broken pottery. Another system alert popped up. System notification. Theo is gaining the trait of the evil shadow dragon. Then the scene changed. Inside the headquarters of the white-armored dragon cavalry, in Commander Julius' office while Julius was picking up the sword, one of his subordinates told him something that surprised him and said, "What? Has Black Snow verified this report?" And his subordinates answers, "Yes, sir." After cross-checking the facts, they say they are 89% certain that this information is authentic. With hearing his words, Julius gets furious and breaks the desk with his fist, and he says with an angry face, "I don't believe this. I should have expected some bad news to rain on our parade. But still, this was completely outside of my expectations." Then scene changes to a battleground, where we see aftermath of this war, where soldiers are abandoned the flags in the field. Trainer has been captain of Platoon 5 of the white-armored dragon cavalry, and the 15 men who accompanied him have all perished in battle. The purification rebirth was an ancient technique mentioned only in old texts. It was a tough process that even the most skilled mages were reluctant to try. This method cleansed the body of impurities and changed its structure to help gather more mana. It was so rare and powerful that it required several high-level mana users and took days of pain to finish. Moreover, it was only effective on children under 5 years old. However, against all odds, this process started within Theo, not by choice or preparation, but due to a series of unlikely events coming together perfectly. It began when a deadly poison from the undead entered Theo's veins, a poison that should have destroyed his body from the inside. Instead, it mixed with years of concentrated mana from ghost shade flowers that had built up in the cave. At that critical moment, Umbra, who had already learned how to neutralize demonic toxins, intervened just as the transformation reached its peak. Instead of being harmed or rejecting the poison, Theo's body did something extraordinary. It absorbed the essence of the poison itself. This unexpected event was beyond anyone's expectations. Back in the cave, Theo suddenly opened his eyes. Evelyn, who had been anxiously watching over him, Her voice shook with a mix of relief and concern as she asked, "Young Master Theo, are you okay?" Theo coughed, his throat dry and sore. The weight of his rebirth felt heavy as he tried to sit up. Evelyn quickly reached out to help him. Even though he felt weak, Theo managed a small smile to reassure her. "Evelyn, I'm sorry for making you worry." Hearing this, Evelyn finally relaxed, letting out a deep breath as she closed her eyes for a moment. Next to her, Umbra made a low sound that resembled a sigh of relief, pressed against the cool stone wall of the cave. He opened his system interface and swiped through the floating screens in front of him. The moment he woke up, he sensed that something had changed deep within him. As he looked at the information displayed, he felt overwhelmed. His gaze narrowed at the last two titles. Then another screen appeared. His status screen. What kind of power was this? Something dark and powerful was now part of him. Trying to stay calm, Theo checked his stats. Level 16. He was surprised to see he had 85 extra stat points. That's incredible. He looked around the cave, his mind racing. These crystals weren't just rocks. They were pure energy. He recalled how the ghost shade flowers, known for their deadly poison, had mutated in this cave. The crystals had changed how the poison worked. Then he turned to Umbra, feeling thankful for him. Umbra's instincts were correct. The ghost shade's toxicity had been lessened and transformed into something beneficial instead. Theo's smile grew wider as realization struck him. His entire body had changed. Excitement surged within him as he clenched his fist tightly. From now on, my growth will be incredible. Without thinking twice, Theo pushed himself up, standing on unsteady legs. But more importantly, he said quietly, narrowing his eyes, the main question is, who was this old man? Evelyn and Theo looked back at the chained corpse, examining every detail. The remains of the decayed body hung weakly against the cave wall. As Evelyn moved closer, she noticed something unusual. Theo frowned as he approached, intrigued. "What is it?" he asked in a serious tone. Evelyn pointed at the stone wall next to the corpse. "There's something written here." Theo focused on the markings, feeling a slight catch in his breath. The inscriptions were carved deeply into the stone, showing skill far beyond ordinary work. The precision of each line suggested that the person who made these carvings was very talented. "A journal," Theo whispered. "Defeated by Kyle and Robert, I hid here to plan my revenge, but my body is failing me." A sudden memory flashed in Theo's mind. The corpse's decayed voice screaming in anger, its rotting jaws biting into his arm as it shouted the names Kyle and Robert with fury. That wasn't just the rambling of a mad corpse. It really knew them. He kept reading the engravings, feeling his heart race. "My body is breaking down quickly. Is it because Robert damaged my mana core? The ghost shade I consumed to survive might actually be killing me. I'm starting to lose consciousness. The dark side is taking control of me. I can't believe this. I haven't even started my revenge. So why am I losing consciousness more often? I need to make a choice. I have to accept it now. There's no hope left for me." He paused as he read the last part. "I will leave everything behind and melt my beloved sword, the jade serpent blade, to bind myself. I hope someone finds this place. I hope they fulfill my wish. I hope they complete my revenge. I pray that my successor will be stronger than me. I leave my legacy here." Theo and Evelyn both stepped back slightly, their eyes wide with shock. Theo's voice was quiet as he moved to the next part of the engravings, carefully tracing the words with his fingers. "Wait a minute. The next part is the fan sword art and the storm thunder god technique." Evelyn's eyes widened in alarm, her breath catching as she realized what it meant. "This is a legendary figure, the one who controlled the winds, the tragic hero who competed for the throne against the current clan head 40 years ago." Her voice lowered in awe as she whispered the name, Untu. "He is the Wind Lord, Hector Ragnar." Theo felt a wave of shock hit him. Hector Ragnar, the Wind Lord, he had been here all along. But before he could fully grasp this revelation, he noticed Evelyn suddenly stiffening beside him. Then, without a word, she knelt before Theo, pressing her hand against her chest and shutting her eyes tightly. Theo's expression turned to confusion and alarm as he stepped closer. "Evelyn, what are you doing?" Her voice was calm but heavy with meaning. Even though he was defeated and exiled by the clan head, the Wind Lord was still a rightful heir of the Ragnar bloodline. Theo interrupted her sharply. "Stop talking nonsense." Evelyn opened her eyes wide, surprise showing on her face. Theo chuckled softly, looking more relaxed but serious. What you killed wasn't Hector Ragnar anymore. That was just a madman, and you did it to save my life. Evelyn seemed ready to argue, her lips parting slightly, but Theo continued, his tone firm. Everything that happened here will stay a secret, Evelyn. Theo faced her fully, his expression serious and hard to read. If this still troubles you, then take the Wind Lord's secret techniques. His voice dropped, filled with authority. You need to take them, Evelyn. Evelyn looked confused, trying to understand. The Wind Lord's techniques are as powerful as the Nine Dragons' techniques. But why are you giving them to me? Theo stepped closer, his gaze steady. Because you will be the next Wind Lord. Her breath caught in her throat as his words hit her like a wave. Theo crouched down to meet her eyes. Continue his legacy, Evelyn. Evelyn felt lost. While she was still processing it all, Theo placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. If you do this, the Wind Lord can finally rest in peace. His voice softened a bit, but remained intense. He smirked slightly. Didn't you say you would become my sword, Evelyn? Evelyn felt a mix of shock, relief, and gratitude. Her hand shook as she pressed it against her chest and knelt again. Her voice was steady and determined. Evelyn Narville, senior swordsman of Ragnar, pledges her loyalty to Lord Theo Ragnar as his vassal. She closed her eyes and spoke solemnly. I humbly ask my great and noble lord to accept the oath of this humble vassal. Theo observed her for a moment, feeling both amused and respectful. You really stick to the rules, Evelyn, he thought with a slight smile. He then reached for his sword slowly and carefully. He pulled it out, the blade shining in the cave's dim light. The cold blade gently touched her shoulder, officially recognizing her vow. From now on, I will hold it in my heart and soul, and for our journey ahead, I promise to make you my first sword. As their eyes met, they shared a silent understanding. Umbra let out a proud growl. Soon after, the three of them climbed onto their wyverns, the wind rushing past as they flew out of the cave toward the headquarters of the white-armored dragon cavalry. The headquarters was busy with activity as wyverns flew overhead. The training grounds were filled with soldiers, both experienced and new, engaged in sparring or caring for their battle companions. Hulkus, he stood tall with his arms crossed, looking proud. Hulkus scoffed and spoke loudly enough for those nearby to hear. So, Theo still hasn't shown up. Maybe I really am the best warrior in the white-armored dragon cavalry. Everyone turned to see who was coming. Theo had arrived. As soon as Theo got off Umbra, all conversations stopped. Hulkus, his confident look replaced by shock, stood frozen with his mouth open. His voice trembled as he exclaimed, Theo Ragnar, what on earth did you bring with you? The crowd erupted into whispers filled with awe and confusion. The senior members of the white-armored dragon cavalry exchanged surprised looks. One finally spoke quietly and uncertainly. Wait, no way! Is that Umbra? Another senior, looking surprised, let out a sharp breath. How did he manage to make that wild creature his partner? The buzz of conversation spread quickly among both recruits and veterans. Does this mean he's the best talent we've seen in 1,000 years? One warrior said, shaking his head in disbelief. Even if he's talented, what is that huge beast? Theo and Evelyn walked toward the senior officer in charge of the admission test. As they got closer, Evelyn spoke up clearly. Senior swordsman Evelyn Narville and junior swordsman Theo Ragnar reporting back from the admission test. Where is the captain? Before the senior officer could answer, a group of warriors surrounded Theo, their voices filled with excitement and curiosity. The senior officer's expression suddenly became serious as he turned to Evelyn. The captain just received an urgent message. He has gone back to his office. Theo and Evelyn exchanged worried looks, their expressions tightening with concern. Evelyn asked, confused and uneasy, an urgent message. Before anyone could guess what was happening, a strong wind swept through the training grounds, stirring up dust and debris. Evelyn instinctively raised her arm to shield her face from the blast. A massive wyvern appeared overhead, descending like a storm. The wyvern landed with a loud crash, sending shockwaves through the ground. The whole training ground went quiet as he spoke clearly. I know you all just finished the admission test. He paused briefly, his expression becoming serious. But I'm sorry, there's no time to celebrate. Starting now, all of you will be sent to Blanky Fortress. A wave of shock and disbelief spread among the group. Whispers began again, but this time they were filled with worry. What? We're being sent into actual combat already? Theo's eyes narrowed. Theo understood the situation clearly. There had been a hostage crisis at Fort Blankway, linked to the theft of the Dragon Sword Strand of Fate, an act committed by Ed Troy Van. Julius stood with a fierce look on his face, his voice strong and commanding as he addressed his dragon cavalry. "Everyone here will be sent to Fort Blanky," he said firmly, and his words sent a wave of tension through the group. The older members exchanged worried glances. One of them stepped forward, looking confused and tense. "What's wrong, Commander? What mission is so urgent that we're sending even the new recruits who haven't finished training?" he asked. Julius gripped his dragon's reins tightly. "Captain Trainer Van and his 14 soldiers are missing." The news hit like a shockwave, causing Theo to freeze in disbelief. Trainer Van was the oldest and most respected knight in the white-armored dragon cavalry, someone even Julius looked up to. Theo's eyes narrowed. He realized that this wasn't someone who could easily disappear. He wasn't the type to go down without a fight. Theo's thoughts turned dark, and he wondered if this was because of something he had done. As Theo's mind wandered, Julius spoke again, his voice cold and determined. "According to Black Snow's report, there's an 89% chance they're dead. If they're alive, they won't be able to continue the mission. The new recruit routes will form a temporary Platoon 5 and take on their mission without delay," Julius continued. He turned to Evelyn, his eyes hard as steel. "Evelyn Naravel will be the captain of the new Platoon 5. You'll have 3 days to finish basic training." His gaze burned with intensity as he tightened his grip on the dragon's reins. His voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "I refuse to believe they're dead." His eyes flared with a desire for revenge. "We will avenge them, no matter the cost." With that, Julius mounted his dragon and soared into the sky with a burst of speed, leaving Theo and Evelyn standing in the cold wind. The story of the Black Skull bandits kidnapping the Sears Merchant Guild was just a cover. The real goal was to steal and transport the dragon-slaying sword, Balmung. Ed Troy Van was using that sword in his coupe. Theo's eyes grew distant. A storm of confusion brewed within him. Things were unfolding differently than in his past life. "Is this my fault?" His expression hardened. Determination replaced doubt as he resolved to face it head-on. "I need to see this through. I have to." A system notification flashed before him. Hidden quest: obtain the Slayer's sword Balmung. The scene shifted to 3 days later at Fort Blanky. The cold was biting, sharp against the skin. One soldier on the watchtower shivered. His breath came out in invisible clouds as he muttered to himself, "It's so cold. I can't get used to this weather." His eyes suddenly locked on the moon. Confusion crept into his voice. Why does the moon look so off? His gaze fixed on something that didn't seem right. Then panic gripped him. "It's the white-armored dragon cavalry," he gasped, his voice rising in terror. Without a moment's hesitation, he sprinted to the edge of the tower, calling out to a soldier below. "Sound the alarms. It's—" But before he could finish, a deafening explosion tore through the air. The watchtower shook violently. His body was consumed in the blast, while the soldier below ducked and shielded himself from the debris. Evelyn and her cavalry soared through the air on their dragons. The weight of the mission pressed on their every movement. Her face was a mask of cold determination as she barked the orders. "Everyone, bombs away!" The command rang out, and one by one, the cavalry members released their payloads from the dragon backs. Upon impact, massive explosions erupted, tearing through the fort's defenses and throwing the scene into utter chaos. On the ground, chaos reigned. A soldier, desperate and frantic, dashed through the battlefield, shouting to anyone who could hear, "Hide inside the castle! Everyone, avoid meaningless death!" But before he could finish his plea, the deadly cavalry descended. White-armored warriors dismounted swiftly from their dragons. The soldier's life was cut short in an instant, slain by the onslaught of dragon cavalry soldiers. The battle had begun. Evelyn, her face a twisted mask of rage, pointed toward the remaining fort soldiers. "Kill every last one of them!" They charged forward, weapons raised. The intent to slaughter burned brightly in their hearts, and Evelyn's voice, tinged with fury, cut through the carnage. "Show them the price of messing with the white-armored dragon cavalry." The flames of battle ignited, and the fort's defenses crumbled before the unstoppable onslaught. The fort was engulfed in fire. Meanwhile, through the forest trails, a lone soldier managed to slip away from the chaos. His chest heaved with exertion as he clutched the dragon-slaying sword. His voice was grim as he muttered, "Damn it, they said they'd handle the cavalry. I would have been dead if I'd left a minute later." The sword in his hand gleamed coldly in the fading light. A grin spread across his face as his excitement grew. "Whatever, as long as I deliver this, my mission is done. All that's left for me is to kick back and enjoy the rest of—" Before he could finish the thought, a figure appeared in a blur of motion. The hooded man moved so swiftly that the soldier barely had time to react. In an instant, the soldier's head was severed from his body, rolling to the frozen ground, leaving behind a spray of blood that stained the ice. The hooded figure, unmoved by the carnage, remained still, his gaze fixed ahead as he calmly wiped the blood from his blade without a word. He motioned to one of his men. "Bring me the goods." His subordinate complied, carrying the dragon-slaying sword with both hands and offering it to the hooded figure. The man examined the sword carefully, peering through the bandages wrapped around it. A dark satisfaction crept into his voice. "Good, it's the correct item." He turned to his men. "We have acquired the target. Prepare the next stage of the plan." Every man in the group acknowledged the order, their voices unified in grim resolve. "Very well, sir." The hooded man turned his gaze toward the burning fort. His voice dripped with malevolent intent. "All that's left is exterminating the pests." His men moved with precision, beginning to push cannons through the icy terrain, preparing them for the next phase of their deadly assault. Back at the fort, the white-armored dragon cavalry had completed their grim work. Hulkus, a towering figure, grabbed a soldier by the neck and with a triumphant yell, called out to his comrades. Subjugation complete. That was easy. Theo, standing off to the side, narrowed his eyes. Something didn't feel right. It was way too easy. His thoughts raced. The uneasy feeling gnawed at him. His eyes flashed a dangerous red as he scrutinized the captured soldiers. It's hard to believe the original Platoon 5 was wiped out by them, he thought. A deep suspicion settled over him as he grabbed one of the soldiers by the head. A system notification pinged in his vision, reading the target's memories. Theo's expression grew darker as the memories of the soldier flooded his mind. Not to mention, this guy knows. They stole Balmung, but he's never seen it in person. His eyes gleamed with growing determination. There was something deeper at play here. Theo lowered his head. His thoughts spiraled. I would have expected this from the lower pawns, but even their executives. What am I missing here? When Erin Bacchus approached, her voice was laced with concern. "What's wrong, Theo? Is there a problem?" Theo snapped out of his thoughts, startled. "No, just lost in thought," he replied. But before he could finish, Sulfur Gardner slapped a hand onto his shoulder. The grin on his face was wide. "You may be called the Flash Tiger or whatever, but a newbie is still a newbie. You can admit it," Erin Bacchus added in a lighter tone. "Since we rescued the hostages, let's just reconvene with the rest of the platoon." Sulfur Gardner rolled his eyes. His irritation was obvious. Yeah, I just want to go home soon," he said. At the mention of gunpowder, a sudden realization hit Theo like a thunderclap. His eyes widened, and without hesitation he dashed forward, sword drawn. His senior members were left behind, confused. Sulfur Gardner blinked, surprised by Theo's sudden urgency. "What's wrong with him?" he asked. "Maybe he hates the way you smell," Erin Bacchus teased. With a powerful, decisive swing of his sword, Theo destroyed the tower wall, sending shockwaves through the air. The explosion echoed, shaking the ground beneath them. As the dust settled, Theo's voice was as cold and sharp as ice. "I knew it." Erin Bacchus rushed up to him. Her face was a mask of disbelief. "What's the meaning of this, Theo?" Behind the wreckage of the wall, stacked explosives tied to oil barrels were exposed. The danger was clear. One of the soldiers, his voice a growl, shouted in fury. "Explosives! Were they planning on taking us down with them?" Theo's eyes darkened as he turned to face his comrades. His voice was low but urgent. "We don't have time to waste. We need to evacuate now." Sulfur Gardner immediately snapped into action, barking orders. "Lank's siblings, commence evacuation. Hurry!" As the cavalry scrambled to escape, the unmistakable sound of a cannonball cutting through the air reached their ears. Theo's heart raced as he spotted the incoming projectile. "Get out of here now," he shouted, his urgency cutting through the chaos. The cannonball struck the fort, and an ear-splitting explosion erupted, swallowing everything in its path. From a distance, the hooded figure calmly observed, his hand raised as he signaled for his men to reload the cannons. His smirk deepened. The malice in his eyes was undeniable. "Exterminate them all. Don't leave a single ant alive." The scene shifted to a palace where the quiet of the night was unsettling. Inside, a woman sat in her royal chamber. Her hands gently cradled Action's lifeless body. "Did it hurt, my baby?" she whispered, her voice barely audible in the silence. Then a violent fury overtook her. Her expression twisted into something dark, filled with a crazed determination. "Mommy will bring you the head of that filthy vermin." And with that, this chapter ends. Thank you for watching this video until the end. Support this channel by liking this video and subscribing the channel. And if you want me to recap another manhwa or manga, write its name in the comments section. And if you want to know that what happened in previous chapters, you can watch them in this channel. Stay tuned for next chapters.